The air was thick with the scent of vanilla and wax, the kind that clings to a room when a birthday cake is sliced. I stood at the edge of my daughter Emily's living room, my hands trembling slightly as I held a small, carefully wrapped gift. At 72, I'd learned to steady my nerves through decades of life's ups and downs. But tonight felt different. The weight of the moment pressed against my chest, heavier than the years themselves. It was my birthday, and for the first time in years, I'd been invited to Emily's home. The invitation had come hesitantly, almost as an afterthought, but I clung to it like a lifeline. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something Newa chanced to mend what had been broken between us. The room buzzed with laughter and chatter. Emily's children, my grandchildren, darted between the adults, their voices bright and careless. I watched them, my heart swelling with a quiet pride, though they barely glanced my way. To them, I was just Grandpa George, the old man who showed up occasionally with stories they didn't care to hear. Emily moved through the crowd, her smile tight but practiced, playing the perfect hostess. Her husband, Mark, stood by the table, pouring wine, his eyes flicking toward me now and then with something I couldn't quite read. Discomfort, maybe, or pity. I'd spent the last decade trying to piece together where things went wrong. Emily and I hadn't always been distant. When she was a girl, we were inseparable. She'd cling to my hand during walks in the park, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, her laughter brighter than the sun. But time, as it does, carved a chasm between us. My mistakes as a father working too much, missing her recitals, letting my temper flare when I should have listened piled up like stones. By the time she was grown, those stones had built a wall. And then there was the divorce. Her mother, Claire, and I parted ways when Emily was 20. And though I tried to keep her close, she pulled away, blaming me for the family's fracture. I didn't fight hard enough to change her mind. That was my biggest regret. Tonight, though, I'd hoped for a bridge. I'd spent weeks choosing the gift in my Hansel locket with a photo of Emily and her mother from when she was 10, a time when we were still a family. I thought it might remind her of the good days. I thought it might soften her heart. Dad. Emily's voice cut through my thoughts, sharp and abrupt. She stood a few feet away, her arms crossed, her dark hair pulled back tightly. She was 38 now, but in that moment, she looked like the teenager who'd stopped speaking to me for months. Can we talk for a second? I nodded, my throat dry, and followed her to the hallway, away from the crowd. The noise of the party faded, replaced by the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of a clock. Her eyes met mine, and I saw its same guarded look she'd worn for years. Dad, I need to be honest, she said, her voice low but firm. Having you here, it's hard. For me. For the kids. For Mark. I swallowed, the gift in my hands suddenly feeling heavier. I thought you wanted me here. Em. You invited me. I know, she said, her gaze dropping to the floor. I thought I could handle it. I thought maybe things could be different. But it's not working. It feels forced. And I don't want to pretend anymore. Her words landed like a blow, but I kept my face steady. I'd learned long ago to hide the hurt. I'm trying. Emily. I've been trying. I just want to be part of your life again. She shook her head, her eyes flashing with something raw anger. Maybe. Or pain. You don't get it, do you? You weren't there when it mattered. You left us, Mom. Me. Everyone. And now you think you can just walk back in. Like it's all okay. I didn't leave you, I said, my voice cracking despite my effort to stay calm. I made mistakes. Yes. But I never stopped loving you. I'm here now. Doesn't that count for something? Her face hardened, and for a moment, I thought she might soften, might let me in. But then she stepped back, her voice rising. "It's too late. Dad, we don't want you here. Not tonight. Not like this." The words hit like a storm, tearing through the fragile hope I'd carried into this house. The chatter from the living room stopped, heads turning toward us. My grandchildren froze, their wide eyes fixed on their mother. Mark appeared behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder, a silent signal of support. I stood there, the gift trembling in my hands, my heart pounding in my chest. "Okay," I whispered, barely audible. I turned, my legs heavy, and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. No one called my name. The night air hit me as I stepped outside, cold and sharp, and I closed the door behind me. The click of the latch louder than any sound I'd ever heard. The street was quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic and the rustle of leaves skittering across the pavement. I stood on Emily's porch, the gift still clutched in my hands, its edges digging into my palms. The locket inside felt like a cruel joke, now a relic of a time that no longer existed. A family that had slipped through my fingers. My breath came in shallow bursts, each one a reminder of the weight in my chest. I was 72, and I'd never felt so small. I walked to my car, parked a block away under a flickering streetlight. The night was clear, the stars sharp against the sky, but they offered no comfort. I slid into the driver's seat and sat there, staring at the dashboard, the silence pressing against me. Part of me wanted to go back, to knock on the door and demand to be heard, to tell Emily she was wrong, that I deserved a chance. But the other part, the part that had spent years replaying every mistake, knew she wasn't entirely wrong. I'd failed her in ways I could never undo. The drive home was a blur. My apartment was on the other side of town, a small one-bedroom place I'd moved into after the divorce. It was sparse, functional, with a few photos on the walls, mostly of Emily as a child, her smile frozen in time. I set the gift on the kitchen counter and sank into my armchair, the springs creaking under my weight. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. My birthday was officially over. Sleep didn't come that night. Instead, I sat in the dark, my mind spiraling through memories. I thought of the summer when Emily was 8, when we'd spent a whole day building a kite from scratch, only for it to crash spectacularly in the park. She'd laughed so hard she cried, and I'd scooped her up, promising we'd try again. I thought of the arguments in her teenage years, when she'd slam her bedroom door and I'd stand outside, helpless, not knowing how to reach her. I thought of the divorce, the way Claire's voice had trembled when she told me she couldn't stay, and how Emily had looked at me like I'd betrayed her. By morning, the ache in my chest had dulled, replaced by a quiet resolve. I couldn't change the past, but I could try to understand it. I needed to know why Emily felt the way she did, why her anger ran so deep. I needed to know if there was any way back. I spent the next few days piecing together a plan. I started with the locket, which I'd left unopened on the counter. I unwrapped it carefully, my fingers brushing against the silver chain. Inside was the photo I'd chosen, a snapshot of Emily and Claire at the beach, their faces lit with joy. I'd taken that photo. I remembered now, standing knee-deep in the surf, shouting at them to smile. I set the locket aside and pulled out an old box from the closet, one I hadn't touched in years. It was filled with letters, photos, and mementos from Emily's childhood, things I'd kept but never revisited. One letter caught my eye, written in Emily's careful, teenage handwriting. It was dated a year after the divorce, addressed to me but never sent. I hesitated, my heart pounding, then unfolded it. Her words were raw, unguarded, spilling out her hurt and confusion. She wrote about feeling abandoned, About how my long hours at work had left her feeling invisible. About how the divorce had shattered her sense of home. You chose yourself, she wrote. You always chose yourself. I sat back, the letter trembling in my hands. I'd never seen it this way, not fully. I told myself I was working for her, for our family. But to her, it felt like I'd walked away. The divorce had only sealed it. I wanted to call her, to explain, but I knew she wouldn't listen. Not yet. Instead, I decided to write to her. Not a defense. Not an apology, at least. Not just that. I wanted to tell her my side. Not to justify, but to share. I pulled out a notebook and began, my pen moving slowly at first, then faster as the words poured out. I wrote about my own childhood, growing up with a father who was distant, who taught me that providing meant long hours and sacrifice. I wrote about how I'd tried to be better than him, but failed. How I'd let my pride and my fears get in the way. I wrote about the love I'd always felt for her, even when I didn't know how to show it. By the time I finished, the sun was setting, and the notebook was filled with pages I wasn't sure I'd ever send. But writing it had clarified something. I couldn't force Emily to forgive me, but I could show her I was still here, still trying. I sealed the letter in an envelope and tucked it into the box with the locket. Tomorrow, I'd decide what to do next. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The letter I'd written to Emily sat on my kitchen table, its weight both literal and metaphorical. I wasn't ready to send it not yet, but it had given me a starting point. I needed to do more than write words. I needed to show her I understood, that I was willing to change. But how do you rebuild a bridge when the other side feels so far away? I decided to start small. Emily's daughter, Lily, was 10, the same age Emily had been in the photo inside the locket. I remembered Lily's shy smile at the party, the way she'd lingered near me for a moment before running off to join her cousins. Maybe I could reach Emily through her children. Not to manipulate, but to show I cared about the family she'd built, the life she'd created without me. I drove to a local bookstore, a small place with creaky floors and the faint smell of old paper. I wandered the children's section, looking for something Lily might like. I didn't know her well, another regret, but I remembered Emily at that age, devouring books about adventure and mystery. I settled on a beautifully illustrated novel about a girl who solves a puzzle to save her village. It felt right, like a quiet gesture that didn't demand anything in return. Back home, I wrapped the book carefully, adding a short note, for Lily, from Grandpa George. I hope you love this story as much as your mom loved books when she was your age. I included my phone number, just in case. I didn't expect a response, but I mailed it to Emily's house that afternoon, my heart pounding as I dropped it into the mailbox. Days passed without a word. I tried to keep busy, tending to the small garden on my balcony, reading, taking long walks through the park. But my thoughts kept drifting back to Emily, to the party, to her words. "We don't want you here." They echoed in my mind, sharp and unrelenting. I wondered if I'd been fooling myself, thinking I could fix things. Maybe some wounds were too deep, some mistakes too big. Then, a week later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Grandpa, thank you for the book. It's so cool. Lily." My heart leapt, a warmth spreading through me I hadn't felt in years. I typed a reply, my fingers clumsy on the small screen. "I'm so glad you like it. Lily, let me know what you think when you finish it." I hesitated, then added, "Love, Grandpa." That night, I sat down with the letter again, reading it over. It felt honest, but incomplete. I wanted to tell Emily more, not just about my mistakes, but about the man I was trying to become. I started a new letter, this one shorter, more direct. I wrote about Lily's text, how it had made my day, how I wanted to be a grandfather her kids could know. I wrote about the locket, explaining why I'd chosen it, how I'd hoped it would remind her of the love we'd once shared. I didn't ask for forgiveness, only for a chance to talk. I mailed the letter the next day, along with the locket. This time, I didn't feel the same dread I had before. It wasn't hope, exactly, but a quiet determination. I'd spent too many years letting the distance grow. Now, I'd fight to close it, one small step at a time. A few days later, I got another text, this time from Emily. It was brief, almost curt. Got your letter. And the locket. Lily loves the book. We need to talk. But not now. I need time. It wasn't much, but it was something. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of possibility. She hadn't said no. She hadn't shut the door completely. I spent the next week reflecting on what time meant. I knew I couldn't push her, but I also couldn't sit still. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping with a program for seniors. It wasn't much just organizing books and serving coffee, but it gave me a sense of purpose, a way to connect with others who carried their own regrets. I found myself listening more than talking, hearing stories of loss and reconciliation that mirrored my own. It made me feel less alone. One afternoon, while sorting donated books, I found an old copy of a novel Emily had loved as a teenager. The sight of it brought a lump to my throat. I bought it, intending to give it to her someday, maybe as another small gesture. I was learning that love wasn't about grand apologies or dramatic moments. It was about showing up, consistently, quietly, even when it hurt. Weeks turned into months, and the flicker of hope I'd felt after Emily's text began to dim. She hadn't reached out again, and I didn't dare push. The locket, the letters, the book for Lily, they were seeds I'd planted, but I couldn't force them to grow. I kept busy with the community center, finding comfort in the routine. The seniors there had become a kind of family, their stories weaving into mine. There was Margaret, who'd lost her son to addiction but found peace in helping others. And Tom, who'd reconnected with his estranged brother after 20 years. Their resilience gave me strength, but it didn't erase the ache of Emily's silence. One chilly morning in December, I was at the community center, setting up for a holiday event, when my phone rang. It was Emily. My heart stopped as I answered, her voice hesitant but clear. Dad, can you come over this afternoon? The kids want to see you. And we should talk. I arrived at her house with a mix of nerves and cautious hope. Lily and her younger brother, Ethan, greeted me at the door, their faces bright with excitement. Lily clutched the book I'd sent her, now dog-eared from reading. Grandpa, I finished it, she said, her eyes sparkling. Can you get me another one? Ethan tugged at my sleeve, showing me a toy car he'd gotten for his birthday. For a moment, I felt like I belonged. Emily appeared in the doorway, her expression softer than it had been at my birthday. Come in, Dad, she said, gesturing to the living room. Mark was there, too, offering a polite nod. We sat, the kids playing nearby, and an awkward silence settled over us. I waited, letting her set the pace. I read your letters, she began, her voice steady but quiet. The locket, too. It brought back memories. Good ones, but hard ones, too. She paused, twisting her hands together. I've been angry for a long time. At you. At Mom. At everything. But I don't want to carry that anymore. It's not fair to the kids. Or to me. I nodded, my throat tight. I'm sorry, Emily. For all of it. I know I can't fix the past, but I want to be here now, For you. For the kids. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you. Not completely. But I want to try. For Lily and Ethan. They deserve to know their grandfather. It was an absolution. But it was a start. We talked for a while. Carefully. Like two people stepping onto thin ice. She told me about her life, her job. The kids. The pressures of keeping it all together. I listened. Really listened. For the first time in years. I told her about the community center. About the people I'd met. About the lessons I was learning too late. She didn't smile. But she didn't look away. Either. Before I left, Lily ran up to me, pressing a drawing into my hands, a picture of a family. Stick figures with big smiles. And an old man with gray hair standing beside them. That's you, Grandpa, she said. I hugged her tightly, my eyes burning. Driving home, I felt lighter, though the road ahead was still uncertain. Emily and I had a long way to go, but we'd taken a step. I thought about the drawing, now tucked into my coat pocket, and the locket, which Emily had kept. Small things, but they carried weight. They were proof that love, even when broken, could still be pieced back together. Over the next few weeks, I saw Emily and the kids more often. I took Lily to the bookstore, letting her pick out a new novel. I played catch with Ethan in the backyard, his laughter echoing like Emily's once had. Each visit was a thread, weaving us closer, though the fabric was still fragile. Emily and I talked more, too, not about the past, but about the present. Her favorite coffee, the kids' school projects, the way Mark's jokes still made her laugh. I cherished every detail, every moment I was allowed to share. One evening, Emily invited me to dinner. It was simple spaghetti and garlic bread, but it felt like a milestone. We sat around the table, the kids chattering, Mark passing the salad. And for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. After dinner, Emily pulled me aside. I'm glad you're here, Dad, she said, her voice soft. I don't know what this looks like moving forward, but I'm glad. I nodded, unable to speak. For the first time in years, I felt like I was home. Winter melted into spring, and my relationship with Emily began to thaw. Too. Our meetings became more regular, coffee on weekends, school events for Lily and Ethan, the occasional family dinner. Each one felt like a small victory, a brick laid in the foundation we were rebuilding. But I was careful not to push too hard. I'd learned that trust, like love, takes time, and I had plenty of that now. At the community center, I found myself sharing more of my story with Margaret and Tom. They listened without judgment, offering their own insights. Margaret told me about her son, how she'd learned to forgive herself for the things she couldn't change. You can't make someone forgive you, she said one afternoon, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. But you can show them you're worth forgiving. Her words stayed with me, a reminder to keep showing up for Emily and the kids, no matter how long it took. One Saturday, Emily asked me to join them for a picnic at the park. It was a warm day, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers and fresh-cut grass. Lily and Ethan ran ahead, chasing a frisbee, while Emily and I spread out a blanket. Mark was at work, so it was just the three of us, plus the kids' endless energy. We talked about small things, her new project at work, my garden, the book Lily was reading. It felt ordinary, and that was what made it extraordinary. As we packed up, Emily handed me a small envelope. This is for you, she said, her voice quiet. Inside was a card, handmade by Lily, with a note from Emily tucked inside. Dad, it read, I've been thinking about the locket. About us. I don't know if we'll ever be what we were, but I'm starting to see what we could be. Thank you for not giving up. I looked at her, my eyes misty, and she gave me a small smile, the first real one I'd seen in years. That night, I added the card to the box of mementos, next to the locket and the letters. It felt like a new chapter, not just for me and Emily, but for all of us. I started to see my role in their lives more clearly, not as the father I'd failed to be, but as the grandfather I could become. I began teaching Lily how to garden, showing her how to plant seeds and tend to them with patience. Ethan loved my old stories, especially the ones about my days as a carpenter, building things with my hands. I made him a small wooden car, and his delight was worth more than gold. But there were still moments of doubt. One evening, at another family dinner, Emily grew quiet when I mentioned a memory from her childhood. I realized later I'd brought up a time tied to the divorce, a wound I hadn't meant to reopen. She didn't say anything, but her silence spoke volumes. I apologized the next day, and she nodded, her face softening. It's okay, Dad. We're learning. Her words were a gift, a reminder that we were both navigating this new terrain. I kept writing to her, not as often, but when something felt important. I wrote about the community center, about how helping others was helping me heal. I wrote about her mother, how I'd loved Claire even when I failed her, and how I saw so much of her in Emily's strength. I didn't always send the letters, but writing them helped me understand myself better. And maybe, in time, it would help Emily understand me, too. By summer, I felt a shift. Emily invited me to Lily's school play, and I sat in the audience, my heart swelling as she took the stage. Afterward, she ran to me, hugging me tightly, and Emily watched us with a look I couldn't quite name: pride, maybe, or relief. Mark clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture that felt like acceptance. We were becoming a family again, not the one we'd lost, but a new one, built on forgiveness and effort. As I drove home that night, I thought about my birthday, about the pain of Emily's words and the quiet, "Okay," I'd whispered. It had felt like the end, but it was only the beginning. I'd left that night, but I hadn't walked away, and neither had she. Summer brought a rhythm to our reconnection, a steady pulse of moments that felt both new and familiar. I was becoming a fixture in Emily's life again, not just as a guest, but as part of the family's fabric. Lily and Ethan's laughter filled my apartment when they visited, their small hands leaving smudges on my windows and their voices echoing in the halls. Emily and I were still careful with each other, but the caution was softening, replaced by a tentative trust. One afternoon, Lily asked me to tell her about her mom as a kid. We were in my garden, pulling weeds, the sun warm on our backs. I hesitated, unsure how much Emily would want me to share. But Lily's eyes were wide, curious, and I couldn't resist. I told her about the kite we'd built, how it had crashed, but we'd laughed anyway. I told her about Emily's love for books, how she'd stay up late reading under the covers with a flashlight. Lily listened, her face glowing, and I realized I was giving her something precious, a piece of her mother she didn't know. That evening, I told Emily about our conversation. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm glad you told her. She should know those things." Her voice was soft, but there was a warmth in it I hadn't heard in years. It felt like permission to keep sharing, to keep building. But not every moment was easy. There were days when Emily's old anger surfaced, sharp and sudden, like a storm cloud on a clear day. One evening, at a barbecue in their backyard, I made a passing comment about her mother, something about how Claire would have loved the kids' energy. Emily's face tightened, and she walked away without a word. Later, she told me it wasn't my place to bring up her mom, that it stirred up too much pain. I apologized, but the moment lingered, a reminder that some wounds were still raw. I turned to the community center for perspective. Tom, who'd become a close friend, shared his own story of reconciliation with his brother. "It's not linear," he said, his voice gruff but kind. "You'll have good days and bad ones. Just keep showing up." I took his advice to heart, showing up for Emily and the kids even when it was hard, even when I wasn't sure they wanted me there. One day, Emily called me unexpectedly. "Dad, can you watch the kids this weekend? Mark and I need a break." It was the first time she'd asked me for help, and I felt a surge of pride and responsibility. I spent the weekend with Lily and Ethan, taking them to the zoo, reading to them at night, listening to their endless stories. When Emily came to pick them up, she looked at me with something new gratitude. "Thanks, Dad," she said. They had a great time. That night, I wrote another letter, not to send but to process. I wrote about the joy of being needed, about how it felt to see Emily's trust growing, however slowly. I wrote about the guilt that still lingered, but also about the hope that was starting to outweigh it. I was learning to forgive myself, not because I deserved it, but because it was the only way to move forward. By fall, Emily invited me to join them for Thanksgiving. It was a small gathering, just her, Mark, the kids, and me, but it felt monumental. We cooked together, Lily helping me mash potatoes, Ethan sneaking bites of pie. Emily and I moved around each other easily, our old tensions replaced by a quiet understanding. After dinner, we sat by the fireplace, the kids asleep on the couch, and Emily handed me a photo. It was from the picnic, the three of us laughing on the blanket. "I thought you'd like this," she said. I looked at the photo, my throat tight. It was proof of what we were building, a moment captured that I'd carry forever. I thanked her, and for the first time, I felt like we were on the same side, working towards something together. As I drove home, the stars bright above me, I thought about the journey we'd taken. It wasn't perfect, and it never would be, but it was ours, and it was enough. The holidays came and went, each one a milestone in our slow, steady reconnection. Christmas was especially warm. Emily invited me to help decorate their tree, and I brought over an old ornament Emily had made as a child, a lopsided star painted with glitter. She laughed when she saw it, a real laugh, and hung it near the top of the tree. Lily and Ethan begged for stories about their mom's childhood, and I obliged, careful to keep the memories light and joyful. Emily listened, her eyes soft, and I felt the distance between us shrink just a little more. But healing is never a straight line. There were moments when the past crept in, casting shadows over our progress. One cold January evening, Emily called me, her voice tight. "Dad, I found some old letters from Mom. They mentioned you." And it stirred things up. She didn't elaborate, but I could hear the hurt in her voice. I offered to come over, to talk, but she said she needed space. I respected that, though it stung, and spent the next few days replaying our conversation, wondering what the letters had said. At the community center, Margaret noticed my quiet mood. "You're carrying something heavy," she said, her eyes kind but sharp. I told her about Emily, about the letters, about my fear that we'd hit another wall. She listened, then said, "Sometimes, people need to feel the pain before they can let it go. Give her time, but don't stop reaching out." I took her advice, sending Emily a short note a few days later. "I'm here when you're ready," I wrote. "I love you. Always." I included a small drawing Lily had made for me, hoping it would remind her of the good we were building. A week later, Emily texted back, "Thanks, Dad. I'm okay. Just need to process. Can we meet for coffee soon?" It was a small olive branch, but it was enough. We met at a cafe near her house. A cozy place with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh coffee. She looked tired but calm, her hands wrapped around a mug. The letters were hard, she admitted. Mom wrote about how lonely she felt, how she thought you didn't care. It brought back a lot of what I felt as a kid. I listened, my heart heavy, and when she paused, I spoke carefully. I failed your mom in a lot of ways. Emily. And you. I thought I was doing my best, but I see now how much I missed. I can't change that, but I'm trying to be better now. She nodded, her eyes on her coffee, and for a moment, we sat in silence. Then she looked up, her voice softer. I know you're trying. I see it. It's a lot. We didn't solve everything that day, but we talked more openly than we ever had. She shared memories of her childhood, both the good and the painful, and I listened, letting her lead. I told her about my own regrets, about the lessons I was learning at the community center. By the time we parted, I felt a quiet hope not for a perfect resolution, but for a relationship we could both live with. Spring brought more opportunities to connect. I took Lily and Ethan to a local fair, their laughter filling the air as we rode the Ferris wheel. Emily joined us later, and we walked through the stalls together, sharing cotton candy and watching the kids play games. It felt like a family, not the one we'd lost, but one we were choosing to build. One evening, Emily invited me over for a quiet dinner, just the two of us. Mark took the kids to a movie, giving us space. We cooked together, a simple meal of roasted chicken and vegetables, and talked about the future, her plans for the kids, my hopes for the community center. As we washed dishes, she said something that stopped me in my tracks. Dad, I'm glad you didn't give up on us. I didn't make it easy, but I'm glad you're here. I set down the dish I was drying, my eyes burning. I'll always be here, Em, I said. No matter what. She nodded, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of the girl who used to hold my hand in the park. As my 73rd birthday approached, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. The memory of last year's birthday was still sharp. Emily's words, my whispered okay, the weight of walking away. But so much had changed since then. We weren't fixed. Not completely. But we were healing. Stitch by stitch. I didn't expect a grand celebration, but I hoped for something small. Something real. A week before my birthday, Emily called. Dad, can you come over on Saturday? The kids want to do something special. Her voice was light, almost playful, and I felt a warmth spread through me. I agreed, trying not to let my hopes soar too high. When I arrived at her house, the front door was decorated with a handmade banner that read, Happy Birthday, Grandpa, in bright, uneven letters. Lily and Ethan ran out to greet me, pulling me inside. The living room was filled with balloons and streamers, and a small cake sat on the table, its candles already lit. Emily stood by the counter, a shy smile on her face, and Mark raised a glass and a quiet toast. It was simple, imperfect, and more than I'd ever dared to hope for. We ate cake and laughed as the kids told stories about school. Lily gave me a drawing of our day at the fair, and Ethan handed me a toy car he'd painted himself. Emily's gift was a photo album, filled with pictures from the past year: the picnic, the school play, the fair, our quiet dinners. On the last page, she'd written, To Dad, for all the moments we're making. Love, Emily. I looked at her, my voice catching. Thank you, Em, for this, for everything. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand, and for a moment, the world was right. Later, as we cleaned up, Emily pulled me aside. I was wrong last year. she said, her voice low. I was angry. And I hurt you. I'm sorry. I shook my head, wanting to tell her it was okay. But she continued. I don't want to lose you again. Dad. Let's keep going. Okay. Okay, I said, echoing my whisper from a year ago. But this time it was filled with hope. We hugged, and I felt the weight of the past lift. Not completely, but enough to breathe. That night, I drove home under the same stars that had watched me leave a year ago. The photo album sat on the passenger seat, a testament to the journey we'd taken. I thought about the community center, about Margaret and Tom, about the stories that had taught me to keep trying. I thought about Lily and Ethan, their laughter a bridge to the future. And I thought about Emily, my daughter, who'd given me a second chance when I didn't deserve one. Life doesn't erase its scars, but it offers new pages, new moments to fill with love and effort. I'd spent years carrying the weight of my mistakes, but now I carried something else: hope. Fragile but real. Emily and I weren't perfect, but we were together, and that was enough. As I parked my car and stepped into the cool night air, I looked up at the sky. Thank you, I whispered, to no one and everyone. For the pain, for the lessons, for the chance to try again. I walked inside, the photo album in my hands, ready for whatever came next.